Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for the invitation to speak, Linda. Yeah, I'm Richard Chapman. This year I founded a thing called Climbing Matters. This is a small Nottingham-based trial that explores the use of climbing in the treatment of trauma and severe mental illness. It was funded via central government from the NHS, and Linda's asked me to tell you the story of how I got that funding. Now, it's not a story of overnight success. You know, I didn't just rock up, knock on the front door and stick my hand out. It's got, like any good story, it's got a beginning, a middle and an end. But unlike most good stories, I'm going to start at the end with a very quick look at the programme itself. Then I'm going to jump to the beginning and give you the sort of backstory, my lived experience. That's important, not just for context, but it's actually a key lever, an enabler to the middle bit of the story, which is how I got the funding. So jumping around like this, it might feel a bit like a Quentin Tarantino film, but there's going to be less swearing, no bloodshed, and I haven't got a great soundtrack. So let's leap to the end and have a quick look at Climbing Matters itself. What is it? It's a collaboration, actually, between three different groups. So the funding came from central government via the Nottingham and Nottinghamshire ICB, the Integrated Care Board. That's what your local health trusts are now called. The participants were all supported by a nationwide social enterprise called Turning Point. They all live with severe mental illness, either in Turning Point's residential facilities in Nottingham or supported by them to live independently. The sessions took place at the Nottingham Climbing Centre, and they obviously provide the insurance, instruction, and the kit. Where do I fit in? Well, I provide what's called lived experience coaching. So at the sessions, I help the attendees make connections in their minds between what they're experiencing when they climb, how it makes them feel, and what they can do about those feelings as a result. Now, that's as close to a therapeutic intervention as we get, and it's the bit that got the NHS interested, really, because it's the bit that means it's not just taking some nice people to the climbing wall to have a good time. It's a 5-week programme, 2 hours a week. We have exclusive use of the centre during that time, and that helps us manage the environment and to reduce levels of anxiety. We have a range of ages, genders, ethnic backgrounds. Peer support workers came from Turning Point as well, and they played a very important safeguarding and governance role. And the structures, the sessions were structured in the same way, again, to aid with familiarity and reduce anxiety. So we welcome everybody. First thing we do in the cafe, we sit and we welcome everybody. And the very first thing I do is I give them a little yellow token, and I ask them to pop it in one of these 5 different coloured pots to match how they feel there and then. It's done anonymously. I put it over to the side, and you can't see where everyone else has put their tokens. Then I lead a 10 or 15-minute coaching-style conversation, a structured conversation around a particular learning point or coaching point, and some of you will have experienced that today, using materials that I've sort of developed and I hand out. And then we get on and do some climbing. Normally get about an hour and a half in, and this, I share these pictures with permission. This is Becky. She's a sort of 5'0" grandmother, bundle of energy, lovely lady. Halfway through session 4, she took me aside and said she's normally incredibly anxious about being around other men. And here she is, putting her life quite literally in the hands of Dave, a man she barely knows. So we saw some pretty powerful outcomes. This is how those tokens spread across the sessions. You can see that at the end of every session, everyone was in the green, no matter how far into the red they were to start with. And you can also see that as the weeks progressed, you got people arriving at the session in the green. This was the highlight of their week. We also captured lots of verbatims to identify any issues that needed addressing and to characterise the type of benefits people were experiencing. And you can see some pretty powerful outcomes here in terms of symptom relief, emotional resilience, improved relationships, even smoking cessation. These are pretty powerful outcomes for something that costs basically about £9 per person per hour. So that's what I've been up to this year with NHS. I've been spending some of your hard-earned taxpayers' money. So to understand the story of how I got that money then, I now need to go back to the beginning and tell you why I got involved. Now, the question why is a dangerous one for people like me. It's not one I'm used to answering, and it's not a story I'm used to telling, and for lots of good reasons. Primarily, self-preservation. Right? My experience was incredibly traumatic and very personal, and it makes me very vulnerable. But it's also for other people's protection, and it does come with a little bit of a content warning. Child loss is not the sort of story that people are used to hearing. We all love a good story, right? But we like stories that are inspirational or instructional, have some sort of happy ending or a sense of redemption, and I've never really been sure my story has any of those things. And that's probably the main reason for not telling it, right? I never saw the point. It doesn't change anything, doesn't make anything better. There's no great insight or lesson for me to magnanimously share with you all. We all know that terrible things happen to people and you cannot stop it. And being reminded of this doesn't really seem like the basis of a great story. because something terrible did happen to us and nobody could stop it. My first child died of cancer in 1998 when he was 14 months old, almost 25 years ago, actually. His brain tumour was very rare. He was the 55th case in the world, and very aggressive. Even now, 25 years of medical research later, it still has pretty much a 100% mortality rate in children under 2. He died in my wife's arms in the house that he was born in. Now, I don't know what your personal experiences or perspectives or beliefs on death are, but I do know that the body is a remarkable thing, and it does not give up life easily. I also know there's nothing remotely inspirational or instructional about watching what happens to a child as they die in front of you. It is brutal, and it is revolting, and it is inescapably agonizing. It is the dictionary definition of traumatic. And just like the dictionary definition of traumatic says, it leaves a mark on you. Violent and unpredictable mood swings, irrational behavior, throwing furniture, punching walls, headbutting doors, poor sleep, intrusive thoughts, normally featuring horrendous injuries to one of my other children, and all rather glibly summarised as PTSD, have been hard things to deal with. This is my lived experience. It's a wound that never heals. And I've never thought the story of that wound was one that others wanted or needed to hear. I've no use for sympathy or prayer, and no any desire to be some tragic figure in a pitiful tale of woe that, quite frankly, might not be any of your business. It's not inspirational or instructional, and it did not have a happy ending. So what am I doing here? Something must have changed, right? Or I wouldn't be stood in front of you. What's that journey I've been on that's brought me here today, and how's it related to that funding I got? Well, like most of the best journeys, it actually started in a pub. Because it was over a pint with a friend that I heard about a thing called the Peer Leadership Development Programme. Show of hands if you've heard of this. Yay, hooray, a couple. Right. So this is an NHS England training course. It's free. It's online. It's quite a commitment. It takes about 6 months to do. I started it in 2020, finished it in 2021. The system had recognised that involving people with experience of care in the co-design of that care leads to better outcomes. Right? It reduces the care burden, which is a euphemism for cost. So they designed this course to create peer leaders, people with lived experience of healthcare, who are trained by the system to know a bit about how the NHS works, so they can help shape what it offers and how it offers it. It's called co-production, and it's a really important idea in the NHS at the moment. Another really important idea on this course is the power of your personal story in that co-production. So they give you an opportunity to tell it, which was something I had never done in 22 years. It was terrifying. But it taught me a few things. It taught me there's more than one way of telling my story, different bits I could focus on. It also taught me I wasn't really telling you the end of the story. I've told you what happened, not what happened next. Because what happened next was life went on, like it always does. There is always life after death. I'm still here, right? My wife and I are still married. We had 4 more children. I've never been medicated, and I feel like I've lived a very fulfilling life since then. It changed me, and it continues to do so, but I'm okay with that. Now, I think that sounds like recovery. The question was, had I done anything in particular to aid that recovery? Well, I'd always had the suspicion that my need to be outdoors, my love of exploration of the unknown, the uncertainty of the outcome, and the discomfort of the process was a deeply biological source of healing for me, causing some kind of neurological resetting in my brain. On the Peer Leadership Development Programme, I found that the system's got a name for this non-medical approach to health, the more personalised approach to my own care that I've been taking. They call it social prescribing. When I told the story of trauma recovery and the role I thought climbing played for me in terms of social prescribing, I found some people in the system wanted to listen. It's like I had something interesting to say. So what I needed was guidance on where and how to say it. So as part of the Peer Leadership Network, I applied to and was accepted on the NHS England's National Strategic Co-Production Group for personalised care, run by an amazing bloke called Colin Royal, and a local co-production group in Nottingham called My Life Choices, and we're supported in the NHS by the lady, the back row on the right there. That's the utterly delightful and highly passionate Debbie Draper. She's the head of personalised care for the the ICS. I was also invited to get involved with an organisation called National Voices by the lady, the far row, just stood next to me, right on the back row on the right there. That's the, again, thoroughly delightful and hugely passionate Ken Worthing. National Voices are a coalition of health and care charities, and they coined a lovely expression to describe the shift to person-centred care. They said that health and care should not focus on what is the matter with you, but on what matters to you. I found ways of telling my story and ears that were interested in hearing it. So I contributed to a short film for the ICS. I was interviewed by Mariana Hotter for the BMC's podcast series, Finding a Way. And at the end of last year, I was wanted to speak at and then join the National Green Social Prescribing Programme Board, about which I'll say more in a moment. National Voices trained me as a lived experience coach as part of their Voices for Improvement programme. And as I grew to understand more about my story and what it might mean, I grew more confident in my ability to tell it in other people's terms, to talk about it in ways they could relate to focus on the bits they might find interesting. So, for example, I spoke to healthcare students at Nottingham Trent University about being hard to reach and health inequalities. I know what you're thinking. What does a straight, white, able-bodied, educated, middle-class man know about inequalities, right? What does somebody with this level of privilege contribute to that conversation? Well, yes, being straight, white, able-bodied, educated, middle-class man, the royal flush of privilege puts me in an advantaged position, but it does not guarantee I'll recover from trauma. In some ways, it might make me less able to recognise my trauma, less likely to ask for help, even when I clearly need it. Right? I'm an Englishman. I'm not supposed to have feelings. So being these things didn't cause my recovery from trauma. Being these things allowed me to access the thing that led me to recover from trauma. That is a critical distinction to make, because I cannot give people the same privilege as me, but I can try and give them the same access as me. When I spoke to clinicians and healthcare leaders, I spoke about the neuroscience of trauma and my sort of search and desire for reassurance that it wasn't just me, that there was some blank screens for me to look at. There was some scientific basis behind what I felt climbing did for me. Now, apologies to the psychologists, the neuroscientists, the behavioural scientists in the room. I'm none of those things, but I spoke to people who were, and I was directed towards the work of a guy called Bessel van der Kolk. The key is to expose the traumatised brain to an emotional experience in a controlled setting, and then support that individual to respond to that emotional experience in appropriate ways. And in his work, to create those emotional experiences in his work with his patients who are combat veterans and survivors of domestic and sexual violence, he uses yoga and drama groups and choir. And I use climbing, right, which is lucky because I'm not very good at yoga, I've never done drama, and I can't sing. The physical act of climbing causes an emotional response in the body. And if you practice responding to those emotional sort of reactions appropriately, you need to climb. That is how you strengthen the neural networks that you need to recover from trauma. And the more you do it, the better you become at managing your emotions more generally, not just the ones associated with climbing. So suddenly my story isn't just a tragic tale of woe, and I'm not some white saviour. It's not grief porn. It has a point, because it aligns really well with some important stuff in this, the NHS long-term plan. Published in 2019, it's very long and complicated. It's got loads of weird acronyms in it. There are 5 strategic thrusts in here. Now, I don't know what 4 of them are, but I do know what the third one is. It's people will get more control over their own health and more personalised care when they need it. Personalised care is about providing people choice and control over how their care is planned and managed. Choices that are based on their own strengths and needs and preferences, on what matters to them. Providing people choice improves care outcome. Investing in the things that are better suited to the individual reduces the care burden in the long term. You're probably starting to join the dots, right? This personalised care is so important to this part of the long-term plan. There's a thing called the comprehensive model of personalised care. It's got loads of targets and documentation how to implement it. And this is where social prescribing sits, at the heart of the strategic imperative to deliver more personalised care. So this comprehensive model of personalised care will appear to be quite important, but it's also quite intimidating. And we probably don't have time to get into it today. But I wanted to put this up because you need to be aware of this if you want to create a connection between the outdoors and health, between adventure and well-being. This is where to do it. The ICS, the 42 ICSs up and down the country all have this model. There are teams of people whose job it is to deliver this. They are commissioning services that bring it to life. If we want to create this connection, this is where to do it. And I don't say that just because, I believe that the outdoors can be a powerful tool in personalising care and improving care outcomes. I say that because the NHS has the evidence to prove that that is indeed the case. Where's that evidence come from? Well, it comes from that Green Social Prescribing Programme, what I told you about earlier. This was a cross-government body of work that has its roots in the summer of 2020. When the first COVID lockdowns lifted, you might remember scenes like this at Llanberis Pass and Durdle Door, just an unignorable clamouring of people to be somewhere outside. Now, the bit of the government that's responsible for the environment, DEFRA, and the then Environment Minister, George Eustice, for all his faults, recognised this. And that summer, they put a pot of money aside to explore this link between the environment and health, outdoors and well-being. Department of Health and Social Care, Dulac, Sport England, a bunch of others got involved. And in December 2020, £5.5 million was announced to explore the benefits and approaches and challenges of green social prescribing. 12 test and learn sites were selected up and down the country. And for 2 years, from April 21 to March this year, dozens of green service providers engaged with thousands of people with a variety of mental health challenges. And the programme will monitor the effect of those activities on those individuals. It wasn't 12 sites, it was 7 sites, do apologise. That report is about to be published. I've seen a draft version, it's very impressive, but the results are under embargo, unfortunately. Nottingham was one of the test and learn sites, and the ICB received £500,000. It actually partnered in the bid with NCVS, Nottingham Community Voluntary Services. Amazing lady there, totally dedicated and talented lady called Amanda Chambers was the programme manager, and she created a thing called Green Space, which is kind of a front door for all the green social prescribing activities in Nottingham. And it was to that organisation that I, in partnership with Turning Point, applied for a small grant, £600, to run Climbing Matters. Now, I can see that's not a lot of money, but you've seen the benefit. You've seen that probably with the right support and training, it could easily be replicated. And it's starting to be scaled because Turning Point was so pleased with how it went, with the benefits that the people they support got from it, that they subsequently applied to Sport England for a much larger grant and received £8,000 to run Climbing Matters multiple times next year and expand it to take people out to the Peak District to do real climbing. I'm also delivering it for the Nottingham Council's Autism and Learning Disability Key Working Service to bring the benefits to a younger audience with a different set of life challenges. And we've got the attention of the One Show, and we're discussing with them about making a short film. So you can see from what started quite small is starting to have a bigger impact, and that's probably what caught Belinda's eye when we spoke earlier this year and why she invited me to speak. And I hope it's been of interest and value to you. What have I learnt? Well, there's probably 5 things I'd draw your attention to. The first, it's co-produced, meaning using all the different groups who might be interested, lived experience partners, community voluntary sector, the ICS, anyone who's got the same objective in mind, anyone who's trying to create the same improved care outcomes. Co-production is about joining those groups up. There's obviously a need for events like this, sort of pushing from the middle, but we need people pulling from the edges, of creating the possibilities, of opening people's eyes to what could be done, of creating the demand. The centre enables and the edges activate, and co-production is key to both. It's personalised. If good health was easy, everyone would do it. But for many, it's not. Now, the system is starting to recognise that what works for one individual might not work for another. So we need to find ways that work for individuals. Okay? Health inequalities can mean that some people are harder to reach. But some people are harder to reach not because of a barrier they have, but because the system's trying to reach them with the wrong thing. It's only ever looking at what's the matter with someone, not what matters to them. It's proactive. Now, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, this, because yes, there is an appetite for trying new things and working in new ways, but because it's so new, there's no single voice of authority on what's going to work. No simple process to follow to make it happen. We're all just learning and making it up. So you need to articulate the value you think you can bring. Tell a story that others can get excited by. Open people's eyes, raise people's heads from the way they think things are to the way you think things could be. No one knows the value of what you can do better than you. It's trusted. If you're going to be part of the system needs to have confidence in you, needs to know what you do, who you do it for, and you need to be confident with the people they send you. The National Academy of Social Prescribing's website has got loads of guidance and documentation on, some of which I contributed to. So download it. Be clear on what you offer, who you can offer it to, have the right policies in place, and start a conversation with the personalised care and social prescribing teams in your area. It's evidenced. Now, I started Climbing Matters with kind of my lived experience and some theories I read in a book as evidence, which obviously isn't ideal, but at least it shows you the power of lived experience. There generally isn't new money just lying around for this, so we have to know how to use the money that's already there. You need to know where the pots of money are and where the benefit might be experienced. They might not be right next to each other, okay, but this is supposed to be an integrated care system. We can help show people what that means. We can make a difference, and I guess that's why you're here. And why am I here? Well, yes, I believe that adventure is good for the mind. And I believe that through social prescribing, we can bring those benefits to people's and minds that might be considered hard to reach. but much more broadly than that, and to echo some of the thoughts in Belinda's book, and apologies for the bastardization of your logo, I believe that the benefits of adventure on the mind are neurological, and what they encourage is the development of an adventurous mind. Now, an adventurous mind is one that's willing to explore itself. It's able to confront its own fears and inadequacies and insecurities. It's able to embrace uncertainty and acknowledge the fact that what your mind might think and believe might not be true. The adventurous mind is full of courage and cooperation and empathy and integrity. It's a powerful tool. It's a powerful tool because although I said you can't stop bad things happening, you can stop good things happening. Fear, anger, resentment will stop good things happening. Isolation, vulnerability, hopelessness will as well. I have more reason than many to feel these things, but good things still happen to me. More accurately, I make them happen. Being able to make good things happen and appreciating them when they do, that is privilege. So I'm here to use my privilege for all those minds that have a wound that won't heal. Because this is a story of hope. Hope that things can change. Hope that you can endure the worst times and still experience good ones. Hope that your life can be about not just what happened, but about what happened next. And for everybody else, well, I'm here as a reminder to appreciate what you have. A reminder of the power of the emotions hold over all of us. A reminder to just challenge what your mind is telling you about other people. You never know which one of us is carrying a story that we can't tell you. Thank you very much.